Hello, listeners. Welcome to KORC's News, Music, and Civics Show. I'm Wendy Byrne, your host for the Corvallis Civics Cafe. What happened in city meetings last week? What was discussed at the advisory groups that met? It is useful to track those discussions because decisions made by advisory groups roll uphill to the City Council. At the Civics Cafe, I cover recent meetings, preview upcoming meetings, and talk about other civic-related topics, such as this being an election year. That's right, in May of this year, Corvallis will be voting on the first round of changes to our city charter. And in November, we will vote on a second round, and we might vote for new city council members and for a new mayor. But wait, there's more. In November, depending on discussions being had at city council in the next few months, we might be asked to cast votes on things like urban renewal for downtown and a bond measure to pay for the construction of new city buildings. Having set the table with that, it's mighty convenient that earlier this week there was an article in the Corvallis Advocate titled City Council Moles Diverting Tax Dollars Toward Downtown Enhancements. Would need voter approval. The article is useful because it shares the information being discussed by the City Council and juxtaposes it with a general review of the public's mood regarding our local economy, city services fees, and taxes. I wish there was more frequent coverage of topics like this in our local newspapers. For those reasons and more, I will read it to you. As published on January 26th of 2026. Money. With all the buzz about new downtown projects and revitalization, one could easily predict what would come next, an ask from local business advocates for city tax dollars. The idea being a vibrant downtown is good for business and the whole community. So, last Thursday, the Corvallis City Council signaled they may favor funneling tax dollars towards what is being called downtown revitalization. The proposal, if passed by council, would also need voter approval. If successful at the polls, a portion of the property taxes that come from downtown would no longer go into the city's general fund, but would be sequestered for special downtown projects. This would be a tax increment financing, or TIF, district. When a TIF district is created, its then current property tax amounts continue going into the city's general fund, but the area's yearly property tax increases do not. Those increases and increased assessments from new building go into a special fund with specific purposes. In this instance, like we've said, projects aimed at downtown revitalization. You may have noticed a TIF district sounds like what was once called an urban renewal district. They are from the same animal, just under another name. What's next? Exactly what is being envisioned for downtown Corvallis and how much it will cost is not exactly clear yet. Boundaries for the district aren't yet decided. Prospective revenues are unknown for now. These uncertainties have caused some tensions. The council largely agrees about wanting to put the matter before voters, but the timing is up for debate. Some on the council are hoping for this year's November election. Others are concerned that not enough planning and research can be completed by then. Without adequate planning, there may not be enough specifics for voters to say yes. And then, even if the voters could be persuaded, inadequate planning could also mean a less effective TIF district implementation. At last Thursday's City Council work session, Ward 3 Councillor Jim Moorfield described the current state of the proposal as, quote, specific light at the moment, unquote. He also said, we've got a ways to go, I think, before we have something that says this is what the plan would be. Moorfield has experience in this arena. He was instrumental in both planning and campaigning for the South Corvallis Urban Renewal District. Ward 8 Councillor Carolyn Mayers, noting that a November election timeline apparently does not permit the feasibility study customary to getting a TIF district started, echoed Moorfield's concerns, asking city staff With a feasibility study being usually done, what's the downside of not doing a feasibility study? Christopher Jacobs from Corvallis' Economic Development Office replied, saying, "It may show that the taxable revenues you could potentially generate within the district are not suitable. They aren't suitable or large enough for the types of projects you want to do." He also said a feasibility study would examine the political realities of seeking public approval. Mayors, who is unabashedly supportive of a downtown TIF district, expressed concerns that voters may be unwilling to approve a plan that is not specific enough or been rigorously vetted. So, what's the rush? Well, the OB Company's Gordon development is a large downtown hotel, apartment, and retail complex currently being built on First Street. Once the project is completed, or in some stage of completion, the county will reassess the property's new post-improvement value. If a TIF district is in place before that happens, the pursuant property tax increase would accrue to the TIF district. During Thursday's discussion, city staff said the county has declined to offer a specific timeline for when the property will be reassessed. Analysis. This is our analysis. Voter approval for a TIF district will be an uphill battle. It appears the council may be underestimating that reality. The potential for approval will be in the details. Voters will need to see what is in it for them. This will be especially true for voters who may not be among the psychograph that would usually frequent a downtown outside of work or business. Also, city fees have fueled real animus. Voters have no direct input on setting these fees, and they are essentially a flat tax. Everyone pays the same amount regardless of their ability to pay. Taxes like these are generally referred to as regressive. They are especially hard on lower income and working poor, and folks with a fixed income. But these fees are increasingly seen as unreasonable even outside of these demographics. Our local government's reliance on operating levies and general obligation bonds is also regressive, even if not to the same degree as the fees. There is also the general economy and increasing uncertainty. Corvallisites are generally more insulated from these realities than most of the nation, but less so in the current moment than during past times of instability. Adding to that uncertainty are unprecedented uncertainties for state and federal budget makers. None of this bodes well for a proposal that would siphon dollars away from the city's general fund. Economic development or jobs would be an argument in favor. But what kind of jobs? Most of the businesses that would benefit are public-facing retail and restaurant, sectors that are constricting generally and that pay lower wages. For those sectors, one would argue it would be more impactful to redevelop the Highway 99 corridor through South Corvallis and 9th Street in North Corvallis. Doing that would reduce travel, which would translate into fewer environmental and infrastructure impacts. In short, we think most Corvallisites generally favor a vibrant downtown, but what remains to be seen is if that sentiment will translate into a willingness to spend for it. The quality of the proposal may prove decisive, so it also remains to be seen if the city can be thorough enough by November, or if not, if they will delay rather than increase the risk of rejection at the polls. That was an article from the January 26th edition of the Corvallis Advocate. The news portion was written by Mike Suarez, and the analysis was provided by Stephen J. Schultz. Money, money, money. There is going to be a bountiful harvest of follow-the-money conversations for the foreseeable future, as the City Council is slated to discuss downtown tax increment financing at their Monday meeting and talk about both the budget gap and how to pay for new buildings during their Thursday work session later in the week. Historically speaking, Corvallis usually starts having conversations with the Budget Commission in March of each year. In 2025, Corvallis moved to a biannual budget, which means that, technically, there is no budget to approve this year. However, given that the City Council is hammering away at money conversations lately, when do they invite the Budget Commission to engage with discussions? hold on, I am out of my regular order of operations, as I have not yet reviewed the meetings and events that happened last week. Mayor Charles Maughan hosted his second town hall and gave a State of the City address on Tuesday, January 27th. And on Thursday the 29th, there was another town hall, hosted by the group Save Corvallis Schools. After the Civics Cafe, stay tuned to KORC's News, Music, and Civics program to hear coverage of those events from Bree Irish and Millicent Durand. For city advisory groups, there was a meeting of the Climate Action Advisory Board, as well as meetings of Phase 2 of the Charter Review Task Force and the Environment and Safety Subcommittee of the Downtown Vitality Strategy Task Force. Recordings of each of those can be viewed at vimeo.com/City of Corvallis. At the meeting of Phase 2 of the Charter Review Task Force, members jumped right into the work, discussing potentially hot topics such as reducing the number of city council wards, which would in turn reduce the number of city councilors. They also began to discuss the city council term lengths and potential changes, if any, to the role of the mayor. Additionally, they discussed term limits. In the end, I found the meeting did not have much heat, but the spice level could develop over time, as the Phase 2 Charter Review Task Force meetings will occur every 2 weeks. Decisions made about changes to the city charter will go to a vote of the public in November of this year. Yes, you heard that correctly. We will be voting on changes to our city charter twice this year, in May and in November. Coming up, there are several interesting city meetings on the calendar. The City Council has an executive session followed by a regular meeting on Monday, February 2nd. The Executive Committee of the Downtown Vitality Strategy Task Force has a meeting on Tuesday, February 3rd, and on Wednesday the 4th, there are several meetings: the City Council work session, the Planning Commission meeting, and a meeting of the Library Advisory Board. On Sunday, January 7th, Ward 8 Councilor Carolyn Mayers will host Government Comment Corner from 10 a.m. to noon at the Corvallis-Benton County Public Library. For today, I will cover the highlights for the City Council business meeting and work session. If you are interested in learning more about the other meetings, you can find the details on the city calendar at corvallisoregon.gov/calendar, where links to each meeting are listed by date. As I have mentioned, the City Council has money discussions on tap for their meetings this week. During the unfinished business portion of the agenda on Monday, they have an item titled Downtown Tax Increment Conversation Continued. The staff memo associated with that conversation states, quote, "Staff recommends the Council review the staff report and provide direction regarding if they want to move forward with a tax increment financing district for downtown and what election date it would like to target." Unquote. This discussion might get spicy because there is pressure on the Council to make this decision as soon as possible. This decision will also include whether or not to approve a feasibility study before proceeding with the creation of a tax increment financing plan. From my read of the staff reports and memos, the pressure to act now is strong. According to the formal timeline outlined by the staff report, in late 2024, the members of the previous City Council intended to move forward with a tax increment financing feasibility study. However, the results of the Civic Campus Engagement Task Force created a pause. Again, there was pressure to move forward early in 2025.
I do want to speak about the Civic Campus and the Downtown Tax Increment Financing District. We did pass a resolution last year, towards the end of the year, regarding the Civic Campus, in which we committed to taking immediate action towards community outreach and creating a path forward.
But the Council decided to be patient until the work of the Downtown Vitality Strategy Task Force was complete.
That it's often framed as we need tax increment financing for the downtown, which is fine. We may in fact need that, but that's the wrong thing to be talking about right now. Urban renewal requires a plan, and the elements of that plan have to be identified before you can do a feasibility analysis.
To add complexity to this stew, while that work is incomplete, the task force has already asked the City Council to move forward with the feasibility study.
So I will move that the Executive Committee of the Downtown Vitality Strategic Task Force recommend the City Council direct staff to place the Tax Increment Finance District ballot measure on the November 2026 ballot.
My question is, will the City Council say yes to that now, or will they decide to skip that study and move straight to the creation of a plan for urban renewal, which can then go to a vote of we the people in November? I will be watching the Monday meeting carefully and will share what I learned during the next edition of the Civics Cafe. And yes, the subject of tax increment financing will likely continue at the City Council work session on Wednesday, February 4th, as the agenda includes items on both the budget gap and what they call facilities funding and what I call how to pay for those new buildings. There are memos and reports for that meeting that include sentences like these. Quote, "The city's revenues are growing at roughly 6.4% each biennial, while recurring expenses grow at 10.3%. Unquote. And, quote, "Previous reports have underscored that this is not a cyclical issue, but a structural one, requiring new revenue sources or adjustments to existing tools to maintain service continuity." Unquote. At this work session, the City Council will revisit the work done earlier in 2025 by consultant Clearwater Financial, which created a list of possible ways to increase revenue to be able to afford the construction of a civic campus and a new law enforcement building. Remember Clearwater Financial? I do. Their work resulted in the opinion that tax increment financing might not be a good method to pay for new buildings.
You'll also see that we're going to include an example of a tax increment financing or an urban renewal type approach or revenue tool. That did not meet the cut.
Before I leave this topic, a few extra points. The pressure on the council to act is high, including items like this sentence from a staff memo for the upcoming work session. Quote, "Inaction or delay is not a viable option and would force staff to make administrative decisions regarding these budget and facility challenges to maintain sustainable service delivery." Unquote. Also, it feels like the council has been led all along toward making certain decisions. For evidence of that, I would point to the fact that via a public records request, I learned that a formal request for proposal for a tax increment financing feasibility study went out in April of 2025 and resulted in Eco Northwest being on retainer to perform such a study, despite the fact that in March of 2025, the City Council decided to await the results from the Downtown Vitality Strategy Task Force prior to making any decisions. Is that spicy? What do you think? Because, remember, when the City Council decides to move forward with urban renewal for downtown, ultimately it will be our decision, because one way or another we will be voting on it. Thanks for joining me at the Corvallis Civics Cafe. I hope the show serves you something new about local civics and inspires you to engage with our city. The Civics Cafe can be heard on Sundays at 1 p.m., with repeats on Mondays at 5 p.m., and on Tuesday mornings at 10 a.m., following the many moods of Ben Vaughn. If you enjoy the cafe, I hope you will return for more and share it with others. Share that the Corvallis Civics Cafe is available as a podcast on podbean.com and on Apple Podcasts. Send me your thoughts and feedback at wendy@korcfm.com. Until next time, I'm Wendy Byrne for KORC's News, Music, and Civics.
It seems like that choice to move to 2-year terms was made to deliberately hamper the effectiveness of government, and that's exactly what it's done.
Yeah.
And I think we should change it.
Yeah, we did that 2-year term, and it did a lot of damage. We're still dealing with it.
I think 4-year terms is the logical place to go.